There is this dispute that the argument of the first cause, meaning that based on the principle of causality, everything, every event, every entity has a cause to bring about its existence. Now, we can go into the infinite regress, which is irrational, which means that finally we have to admit to a first cause which itself is causeless. That means it's self-sustaining, it's self-caused. Now, it is very important to look at this argument understanding that the principle of causality, which is fundamental to understanding this argument, itself limited to the created world, the contingent world. Why is it called contingent? Because it is conditional upon something else. Now, what is that something else that the totality, the entirety of the contingent realm, which is the totality of the created world, everything that is contingent upon something else? That includes the physical, the spiritual, and everything else in between. So the whole concept of existence is contingent upon something else. Now, when I'm using this word something, I'm really desperate, since I have no other word to use instead. I have to take refuge under the word thing, because we are using a language which is a creation, a tool that is being used by our intellect. And our intellect, as we have discussed it many times in other recordings in depth, is intrinsically limited. It's an instrument with limited range, limited number of detectors, and specific kinds of detectors. Therefore, when we are speaking of the world of creation, everything, this everything is contingent. It does not stand on its own feet. It is contingent, it's conditional and dependent upon this is when the three dots come in, dot, 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 because what are we going to put in here? Depend upon another entity. This entity, this another entity, we have no idea what it is. Not only we have no idea what it is, we have no way of knowing its condition. It's unknowable, it's unreachable, it's unthinkable, because it is not contingent upon anything else. When something is contingent, we know there is dependency, there is conditionality. And these are attributes that we can pry into using our tool, the intellect, the faculty of intellect. Faculty of intellect is a tool which is relative. It functions based on relationships. It is not an essential, non-conditional tool. It is, on the contrary, a contingent tool. It is conditional. It works based on relationships, not essences. Anything that is operating based on relationships, dependencies, is contingent. It is relative and not absolute. It is contingent and not independent. So the argument that, yes, even if there is a primal cause that moves this world, moves the world of creation, that cause itself needs to be caused. This does not hold water. This argument does not hold water. Why? Because when we are talking about the relationship between cause and effect, the principle of causality, we are only talking about the world of creation. A causeless cause is not part of the contingent world. Is not part of the world of creation, the created world. It is independent, sanctified, beyond any relationship whatsoever. There is the main difference between something, an entity, a phenomenon that is relative, and even the concept of something that is non-relative, hence it is absolute. So notice that we really cannot go any further than that. We can only conceptualize the situation, only conceptualize it. This concept is my own creation as a human being, a limited entity, a limited being. My own existence is contingent upon another source. Out of this condition, I come up with the concept of non-relationship, non-contingency. That's as far as I can go. This is only a notion, comes into existence for me conceptually only because my intellect is capable of understanding and comprehending and figuring out what does it mean when we are talking about relative existence. That's it. Hence, the opposite of a contingent existence is non-contingent absolute. What is absolute? Absolutely no idea. Because the ideas cannot reach that far. It's not a matter of quantitative incrementations, quantitative increase, development. No. This is not a matter of quantitative differences. It's a qualitative difference. The reality of a contingent entity is not the same as the reality of the absolute. That's it. He gave an example in another recording of an ant living in my backyard garden. The total square footage of the garden, although limited, for the ant is infinite, relatively speaking. Relatively speaking, that means we are nonetheless putting boundaries. But this boundary is meaningless for the ant, because ants' infinite relationship, infinite understanding of the garden, understanding the garden as an infinite entity, is not a matter of quantitative development. It's a matter of qualitative. So no matter how far the ant develops, can never comprehend, although the garden is finite. However, for me as a human being, I know it's within my qualitative abilities, capacity, to know that although this garden is infinite for the ant, is finite for me. Now we can extrapolate this example and try to understand that what we refer to as the causeless cause makes no sense whatsoever. We are only using this talking point to argue against the primal cause. That, okay, if there is a cause, the first cause in itself has to have its own cause, but everything should have a cause. Yes, everything must have a cause. There is no such a thing as a causeless cause. Within the contingent realm, within the world of creation, the created world, the contingent world, these are all the same. The principle of causality rules. However, beyond the contingent realm, cause and effect has no meaning. The principle of causality does not operate. Its operational field is the entirety of the contingent realm, nothing else. Now, remember that contingent realm includes everything. Physical, spiritual, everything in between. Everything. So I think it's clear that we're simply, let's say, we're simply going to Japan, but I'm trying to speak with everyone in English or in French, which I know they don't understand. Makes no sense. It's ridiculous. When something works for something, it doesn't mean it's going to work for something else. Why? Because that agency is limited in its range of operation. Beyond that range, it's rendered useless, inoperative. That's it. And that's what happens here. Wanted to record that so we can refer to it later on and see if it still makes sense.